All right, there, Goldman Sachs at the New York Stock Exchange, the balcony overlooking the trading floor. Press that button, Mr. Goldman Sachs, asset manager dude. A bunch of rich people up there, some very rich people up there. Because not only are they Goldman Sachs, they are the asset management people, which take care of very rich people. There she is. She pressed it. They take care of very rich people's. And by the way, a good day. Well, kind of a mixed day. Dow Jones ended up on the day 100 points. NASDAQ was down. What do you have? 65 points there. It was down 16. I think the final number is 16, if I'm not mistaken. Dow Jones was up about 100. Gold, look at $3,361. Continues to be the place to go. Gold and Bitcoin. Bitcoin is shrugging all the bad news off about the economy, all the craziness, the wackiness that's going on in D.C. and Wall Street. Again, when K Street, so to speak, D.C. crosses with Wall Street, I always pick Wall Street first. The market is not loving this. They're going to get their act together, though. Again, Dow 114 higher, NASDAQ about 16 lower. A couple of big stocks. And again, you guys get a little upset with me, but a lot of people are, 401ks, right? You got a pension fund. You got stocks, like it or not. Apple held its own. Tesla down a little bit. Apple up a touch. So about even. People are waiting. A lot of economic news coming out the rest of the week. All right, folks, happy Monday. Well, we made it another week. Let's go, and again, as we just talked to our RAV White House correspondent, Brian Glenn. He always knows how to ask the right questions, right? During the morning press briefing this morning with Caroline Levitt and Tom Homan, Brian had the last question of the day. Take a look.
Go ahead, Brian. Sure. We'll take one more question.
Thank you. This is for Mr. Holman. We all walk by these heinous yard signs that are along Pebble Beach. What is some of the feedback that your ICE agents are getting in the field from the community as they remove these individuals from their families, their neighborhood, their schools, or all the places in their community? What's been the reaction that your ICE agents have gotten from the people who live amongst these individuals?
The morale of ICE and Border Patrol is at all-time high because they're getting to uphold the oath they took, and they're enforcing the law. Border Patrol and the Biden administration, I met with hundreds of them. They felt like Uber drivers and tourist agents. These men and women joined the ranks of ICE and Border Patrol to enforce the law, make the community safer, and protect national security. I hear it all the time. There's a lot of people in this country who don't like me. I don't care. But when I walk through an airport, I have many people walking up to me and thank me for what I'm doing, and I'm not taking credit for anything. The success of the border and immigration enforcement is President Trump and the men and women wearing that uniform. God bless each and every one of them. But I take a pleasure in seeing it because in 40 years of doing this job, people always want to say, why are you so emotional when you testify? Why are you so emotional on network? Because if they wore my shoes for 40 years, they'd understand why I'm emotional. I've talked to little girls as young as 9 years old that were raped multiple times by the cartel members. And when you get to your knees and you talk to that little girl and everything innocent and pure has been ripped from her, when you listen to the Laken Riley, 17 minutes, that young lady fighting for her life. Don't just think, okay, a young woman died. Think of how she died, the terror that she went through, and these children that are sexually assaulted. I stood in the back of a tractor trailer and 19 dead people at my feet that baked to death. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. And so every sick person we take off the streets, especially child rapists, it makes this country much safer. Every illegal alien we arrest, public safety threat, one at a time, makes this country safer.
So we can clearly see that with the 100 days approaching tomorrow, 100th day, the White House, the administration is very much clearly taking a victory lap on immigration. Let's bring in Brian Glenn, who asked that great question. Brian, congratulations on getting yet another question into some of the most important, influential people in the White House, in the briefing rooms, in the Oval Office. You're crushing it, my friend. Serious emphasis on the success, especially when you saw the yard signs of all those thugs and losers that they've deported. Good news, though, right?
Yeah, it's great news. As I walked in this morning, Eric, seeing it, about 100 signs lined up, and each one of these bug shots had specifically what they were charged for. And Eric, we're not talking about, robbery. We're not talking about, theft. We're talking about hardcore things like sexual assault on a minor, rape, murder. some really heinous charges. And, my question to Mr. Holman was really to see what the feedback was in the communities. And think about this for a second, Eric. If you live in a community and they rip out some of these heinous criminals from your community, they're no longer there with potential to harm to your family, your friends, your coworkers, that's a good thing, no matter really what country they're from. If they're U.S. citizens and they're removed from your neighborhood and they're a known killer, a rapist, a murderer, anything like that, it's a good thing. So that was my question, because I wanted to make sure that Americans at home understand that Tom Homan, his ICE, all of his law enforcement agents are being supported and applauded by Americans that live in this country, and they want to see these people removed.
It's got to be really frustrating for them. They're doing the right thing. All of a sudden, crossings are down 95%. I think the White House put out a little press thing today. The numbers looking at 95% reduction in illegal border crossings, and yet they have activist judges they're constantly fighting. I mean, how are they going to work? What's the workaround, especially when the Supreme Court doesn't really give them any relief? What's the White House saying internally about that?
Well, obviously that was one of the questions that was asked earlier in the briefing. And when it comes to these rulings with the courts, I mean, of course, they want to respect the ruling of any court, no matter if it's a higher or lower court. But it comes a point where you start to say, are these rulings going against our Constitution, our duty to protect this country? And I even throw out the T word here of treason. Are these judges, and I would even say most of the media here, I got to be very honest with you, Eric, seeing what MSNBC did today by blurring off the mugshots along the yard signs there, so you don't see the images of these individuals, that is treasonous news coverage, in my opinion. That is protecting the criminals in this country. You're allowing criminals to take over, harm Americans. And I think every elected duty, either you're in Congress or Senate or you're a sworn judge, you have the right to protect this country. They're not doing it.
It's interesting. I had not seen that they blurred the images. I don't know if I call it treasonous, Brian. I would call it they're choosing not to be journalists, not to be news. And if you're going to do that, that's fine. You be straight up propaganda, but you don't get the protections, the First Amendment protections of a news service like this. If you're going to do that, you're biased, and therefore you're propaganda, and you're basically for profit. You're not representing both sides. You don't deserve, just like you don't deserve it when you're 501c3, that you're supposed to be fair to both sides. You get tax credits and benefits, tax advantages. You don't get it. There are certain Chinese walls. They're called Chinese walls. There's certain protections against suing the media if they say something and that's wrong. You can always do it, but there are protections. If they're going to do that, they've basically outed themselves as not wanting to be protected by the First Amendment. If I were the Trump administration, I would go after them next, right after 60 Minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about them going after the Associated Press for mislabeling a body of water, calling it the Gulf of Mexico when it's the Gulf of America. Then what do you do to a media outlet that is absolutely blurring criminals that are harming? They've raped people, they've murdered people, not only in this country, but in the country they came from. What do you call that? What is the purpose of that? And I also pose this question for you real quickly. I know we're getting very close to the Philadelphia Eagles, by the way, are going to step out behind me. Let's reverse the roles here, Eric. What if Americans would have entered a country illegally, let's just say Mexico, committed the very crimes that are on those yard signs, rape, murder, assault, distribution of fentanyl? What if they would have been caught doing those things in those countries? What do you think would happen to them?
Yeah.
Let me answer for it. They would pray that they get deported back to the U.S. because they would get locked up indefinitely. In these countries have beaten and tortured or not.
And good luck negotiating. Good luck negotiating with the drug cartels and the human trafficking cartels to try and get your loved one out of a Mexican prison. Brian, before the Philadelphia Eagles come out and join President Trump on this celebration of their Super Bowl victory, which I think I ended up making money on that because I think I had Saquon Barkley, but it didn't happen. And then whatever. Make a long story short, I gamble a lot, and I remember having a decent Super Bowl. It's a couple of months. We'll do it to you. But do you remember this? Mad Dog, play the Philadelphia mayor chanting something positive for her Eagles.
Let me hear you all say, E-A-G-L-E-S.
Brian, I take it Mayor Sherelle Palmer, if that's her name. I guess she's not going to show up today. She can't even spell her own team's name.
Well, we've spent how much on billions of education? Maybe that's reason number 447 why the Department of Education needs to be dissolved, because obviously she can't even spell the name of their team.
Well, wait, we're going to let you go because you got some stuff to do, but I think you're going to be in Michigan, Detroit. I think I'm hosting with Bannon some of the coverage, and this is really exciting. You're going to ride aboard Air Force One, right? Yeah, I'm going to take a little ride on Air Force One and can do the coverage from there. I know you and Bannon are going to be here in D.C. anchoring down here. It's going to be a fun day. I'm not sure what time the coverage kicks off, but I would imagine I'm going to have a few Red Bulls and Celsius and a good morning breakfast to keep me going throughout the day. But it's going to be a big day tomorrow as we celebrate 100 days in this administration. Great. And enjoy the Air Force One ride. It's wild, as you know. It's an amazing moment. Take note on who's on that plane and who's acting nice and who's not wearing their seatbelts and puts their tray table up and locked through. I never do, by the way. I forget about it. So. I'll never forget my ride on Air Force One when I had to sit behind Sean Spicer, and he and I, we've had our moments together. We don't really see eye to eye on a lot of things. So, of course, he had to point out that he was sitting closer to the front than I was. But anyway, I digress. Brian, have a great day, and we'll be back with you definitely tomorrow for coverage.
Thanks,
I believe we start at 3 p.m. Eastern. All right, folks, before we head to break, just wanted to remind you all about my podcast and YouTube page, both updated daily. You can watch this show, of course, but on tons of other content anywhere, anytime. Hit subscribe. It's free, absolutely free. You don't want to miss a thing. Coming up, we're going to talk to David Pollack about the SpaceX/NASA launch we both attended. We'll be right back, 2.5 minutes. All right, folks. Well, not much has changed. The sky is still blue. The grass is still generally green. And the Democrats are still fear-mongering about Donald Trump.
Your colleague from Georgia, Senator Jon Ossoff, told voters at a town hall that he strongly agrees that President Trump should be impeached. Do you agree with him? Would that be a priority if Democrats were to take back Congress?
Well, look. Right now, President Trump is violating rule of law in every way. And we're fighting him every single day in every way. And our goal is to show the American people over and over again, whether it's the economy, whether it's tariffs, whether it's Russia and overseas, and whether it's rule of law, how bad he is.
Goodness, he's breaking law. Actually, he's trying to stop other people from breaking law. And the people who do break the law and come over the border illegally, he's just trying to send them back, Chucky Schumer. You guys lost an election on it. You should really get on the right side of that one. Democrats have no plan, no vision, and whether they own it or not, they're very little supportive of each other. These lawmakers never really have a serious approach to anything. Cory Booker stood and whined for a full uninterrupted 25 hours, a full day plus. AOC and Bernie Sanders almost immediately followed that pathetic display with a publicity tour of their own. Remember, fight the oligarchs in their own private jets. Okay. Even the mainstream members of the party are starting to ask questions about their very obvious lack of direction. Here's an interesting clip on MSNBC that outlines the confusion and frustration on the left that isn't being reported on except by us.
One of the reasons Donald Trump's base gives him space is because they, like a lot of people, say the country's not working for me. Right. And they're giving him time because they're saying his plan might not work, but at least there's a plan. And Cory Booker did stand up, but they've yet to say, well, here's what we're going to offer.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the only thing, because it was at least understandable. I don't care who you are. Most people would understand. I wouldn't stand in the line for 25 hours to get a Star Wars movie, right? Like, people understood. It was like, okay, this is.
I definitely wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't, right? And I'm into that stuff. But the Democrats as a whole, they don't have a message. Hakeem Jeffries doesn't have a message. Chuck Schumer doesn't have a message. I expected this from the Republican Party. I knew this is the kind of stuff they were going to do. What I'm shocked by is that the only people who seem to be talking are Bernie and AOC running around the country. And trust me, I went to their rally in Los Angeles. They're still making the same mistakes they always did, which is a crowd in downtown Los Angeles that still doesn't look any more diverse than downtown Wisconsin. That's the issue. So the first 100 days, Democrats still failing, Republicans doing what I expect.
Yeah, and by the way, they flew there in private jets, Mr. Liberal Progressive Democrat. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went on MSNBC, give him credit for that, called out Martha Raddatz to her face on her own show about the left's false reporting on the economy. This one's good. Listen.
When I look at some of the things that are being published, there was a story 10 days ago that said this is the worst April for the stock market since the Great Depression. 10 days later, the NASDAQ is now up in the month of April, and I haven't seen a story that says, oh, stock market has biggest bounce back ever. So I think...
It certainly has gone back and forth.
I think a lot of this is media-driven.
Yeah, they don't like it. Just when the facts hit them in the face, they just hate getting the facts. Good on you, Besant. I got to look that up, by the way. I didn't know the NASDAQ is higher than it started the month of April. We'll check into it. Someone needs to hold J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, accountable for all the garbage that he says. Ever since he helped cover up old Joe's decline, he's been allowed to freely do and say whatever he wants. Here he is calling for protests and violence, by the way.
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption, but I am now. These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace. They have to understand that we will fight their cruelty with every megaphone and microphone that we have. We must castigate them on the soapbox and then punish them at the ballot box.
All right, Chubby, whatever you say. I want to go back in time for a minute to December 2020 when Senator Adam Schiff, congressman at the time, said this to Joy Reid.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person?
But no, I think that it's an effort not only to prospectively pardon people for things they have not yet been charged with and may never be charged with, but also it's the president's own family. It's people that have been covering up for the president in addition to his own family. This is the nature of those the president has surrounded himself with, including his family. And that is, it's been essentially a den of thieves environment. And so I think the president views this as his way of trying to protect those that have protected him.
I see. No preemptive pardons, say you, Schiff, in 2020. Well, as you know, 5 short years later, Schiff received his own preemptive pardon from crooked old Joe. The reason this is yet again relevant is because Shifty Schiff just went on Bill Maher's show and told him this.
Pretty unprecedented, right? Before he left office, Joe Biden pardoned you and a number of people who he thought Trump would go after.
No, I take the opposite view. I don't think he should have given the pardons at all.
Really?
No, I don't think he should have, and I was vocal about that at the time.
Can you refuse a pardon?
That's less clear because in the case of the January 6th committee, he pardoned essentially the whole committee.
I see.
But I didn't like it both because we were enormously proud of our work on the January 6th committee, but more than that, establishing a precedent that on the way out the door, you're going to pardon any number of people, gave him even greater latitude on his way out of the door to pardon everyone around him.
Okay, so you don't like the idea of preemptive pardons, Shifty Schiff, and then turn yours back in. Let's test the law and find out if you can turn your own freaking. I guess you can, right? It's you. You say, I don't want the pardon. Then we can prosecute you for all the BS that we now know surrounding the January 6th BS show trial and all the crap you guys did and all the stuff you did leading the House, judiciary. I guess that's who took Trump to task and impeached him twice for BS. Before we head to break, I just wanted to remind you all about my podcast and YouTube page, which are both updated daily. You can hear the show and tons of other content anytime, anywhere. Be sure to subscribe now. It's free. Just hit the subscribe button where you get your podcast and YouTube. We'll be back in 2.5. Well, look at that. Brooklyn and Williamsburg bridges. Boy, those things are old. Those things are old. All right, folks, I say it all the time because it's true. This is my favorite time of day when I can speak with Stephen K. Bannon and learn something. Welcome, Steve. Steve, you wanted to weigh on Pencil Neck Adam Shifty Schiff.
Hang on.
Yes,
hang on. Before I get to Shifty Schiff, quickly, the Birch Gold guys are going to go down to the Rio Reset, Philip Patrick and the team, and I am now going to call them tonight and nominating to you to go down with them.
Oh, I love
as
it.
Both security, guard and host of the show from down there.
So
would you do that in July?
I could double. I would absolutely do that. I would love to do. I also want to get inside Fort Knox. I want to find out how much gold is really there. I want to be there and see that as well.
Exactly.
I mean, I spent 12 years on Wall Street trading oil and gold and some agriculturals as well. But so I would love to get involved, because you know what happens, Steve.
I'm going to work on that, Eric.
If they pull the U.S. dollar off the reserve currency, that means all these countries can sell U.S. dollars. That'll tank the value of the dollar. You want to talk about inflationary?
That Rio reset.
Yeah, that'll do it.
The Rio reset is huge. It's a huge
just very quickly. You know why? Because when they tank the value of the dollar, they're worth less. You need more dollars to buy the gold and the oil and the commodities. You need more of the same dollars. So it's really an inflationary method that could really hurt our economy. But I'm glad you brought it. So Shifty Schiff, what about this guy, this pencil neck guy?
It was amazing you had this. He left out one big part, is that he was the guy that drove Navarre and I going to prison for misdemeanors. He wanted criminal contempt. That guy's a liar. He crawled on his belly and begged for a blanket preemptive pardon. He was one of the ones that cried the most. This guy's just the worst of the worst. I had to deal with him in the Mueller investigation, House Intel, when Paul Ryan just backed away and let Trump hanging out there. They took us down to that House Intel and grilled us for hour after hour after hour. He and Swalwell. They just turned the committee over to him. Shifty Schiff's as bad as it gets, but man, he crawled on his belly to the White House to make sure he got that pardon, because he knows he was heading to jail. The whole staff got pardons too.
Why don't we hold him to it? Why don't we hold? You don't want it. You want Shifty. You don't want that. You think blanket pardoning preemptively is a bad idea? Let's take yours away.
No. I think that we got it. We got so many. Look, I want to get to him, but we got so many. Pam and Cash are got to get focused on so many. And I hear there's news going to break in the next week or two.
I spoke to Cash.
It's stacked up. I need Brennan, the 51, all of them, Eric.
I spoke to Cash on Friday. He said expect something high profile very soon. So hopefully it's that, Steve. I'm going to give it to you because I've already eaten into your show. I'm looking forward to seeing you, working with you tomorrow.
No.
We'll hang out tomorrow.
You're the best. You're the best A block we got. Okay. Eric Bolling is in the house tomorrow here in Washington. He's going to be hanging out. We're doing 5 hours of cover starting at 3 o'clock. All the way through. Gruber's going to be there as one of the hosts at the Trump 100 Day in Michigan, and our guy Brian Glenn's on the plane. He's on Air Force One, so we're going to have a great time. It starts at 6. We'll be picking up coverage at 3. Eric, you and I got a lot to catch up on. We'll have a great time. Look forward to seeing
you tomorrow, Steve. I'll bring you a cigar.
It's another bad habit I quit. Kicked all my bad habits.
That's what I'm here for,
all
Steve. That's what I'm here for. I'll see you tomorrow.
One thing we can't go to Rio together. You go as the advanced man.
Oh yeah, I think it might be a little bit of a problem.
No, but since you traded oil and gold for a dozen years in the pits, you'd be perfect to go down there. This meeting is so big because we've been warning people for years since we teamed up with Birch Gold to do the end of the dollar empire, that this day was coming. Remember, this is the thing, and today, John Thune, before I let you go, Eric, John Thune put out something truthful. He said, hey, look, from the Senate's perspective, I'm not so sure we get to this, that this thing's going to be ready for us to really consider until after Memorial Day. He said, look, it could be through the summer before you vote. This is what I've been saying. People are saying this thing's going to get voted